Well, let's change topics in this carefully designed edit right here, Jim. And actually, let's go to something we mentioned earlier. That was a part of Omnibus season.
Yes.
Vince McMahon stories, and some of the stories you have told on the show previously were about you and various other people at his house, at his pool, at his kitchen table.
Yes.
And news broke this week, and everyone just loved to talk about this story, that Vince McMahon's house was going for sale in Greenwich, Connecticut for $32 million.
Yes.
What are your thoughts?
I saw that as well, and immediately I said, wait a minute, I got to see how they're listing this and maybe see some pictures of the old place. And, remember when Pat Patterson would hide behind those bushes and impersonate one of the landscapers, or when I got pushed in the pool, or when Bruce took a horrible stinky shit in the guest bathroom right inside the front door in the front hallway there, and you could smell it all the way back in the dining room. I'll relive some memories. And I clicked, but I'm at the same time, I was like, I knew this joint was big. And it was impressive to my untrained eyes, who had not spent a lot of time in Greenwich mansions at that point in my life. But I didn't know it was worth $32 million even today, right? So I clicked on that real estate listing, and I started looking at those pictures, and I'm like, I don't recognize the old place at all. He certainly changed something. Well, wait a minute. And then I realized, wait a minute, it ain't the same house. And apparently somebody in a later article or listing or some talk about this, they've mentioned that this is a house that he bought in 2014, which obviously is more recent than the late 90s, the last time I hung out by Vince's pool. But I was looking at the map, because the real estate listing obviously has the map there, and apparently he bought a house that's just around the corner and down the bend for this neighborhood from the house that I spent time in. He still lives, it's like the next road over. You can't even say street. These places have 10, 12, 15, 20 or more acres in this area, and it's heavily wooded. And so you don't really see, I haven't been to every house in the fucking, in the development. You can't call it a development in the neighborhood, but you can't really even see your next door neighbors. So this house apparently is down and around the bend from the one that he had before, and it's much more massive. It's bigger. I saw the aerial picture. There's a lot more shit going on at this place, even than the last one he had, which was pretty daggum impressive. And I guess he had lived in that house since, at least the 80s, I guess. Well, yeah, he wouldn't have had it before the 80s, but he had been there for a while at that point. Remember, I don't know if it was on the bus episode, but I've mentioned this in public before. He lived in the same neighborhood. It's a gated community. But yeah, like I said, you can't really call it a community when you've got, 15, 20 acres around you and the next door neighbors. But it was the same gated community as Ron Howard, Opie Taylor on the Andy Griffith Show. Also, director of minor movies, right? Ron Howard. He's probably got a couple of dollars. And you had to, when you turned off the main road into Vince's neighborhood, you had to go through a guard shack, and you had to show them your papers. Either tell them, hey, I'm going to, obviously they knew the residents, but if you weren't a resident, you had to say, I'm going to so-and-so's house, and they had to check and see if you were on the list. And if you weren't on the list, they had to call the house and get the okay before they'd let you in the fucking neighborhood. Not in Vince's own driveway, but just anywhere in the neighborhood. And so me and Bruce and later on Shitstain, we were on the standing Wednesday morning list or whatever. And, you got to know the guard, but I would pull up there in that beat up old, I still had the Taurus when I first moved up there. And that beat up Ford Taurus I had, and it looked like, shit in the neighborhood, right? But the guard was very friendly. But point being he had, there's apparently another house that was bigger, an upgrade came on the market in the same area. What is it, Conyers Farm or whatever? And so he upgraded a while back, and now he's selling. I don't know where he's going now. Where is he gonna get a bigger mansion than this, or do you think he's gonna downsize now that he's entering his golden years?
This is the end. Beautiful friend, the end. I think, look, he's downsizing. When has Vince McMahon ever downsized anything?
I've never known it to happen.
Linda's already living her own life in Florida. Vince has a place in Florida. I don't know. Who knows what's going on? He doesn't look.
I heard a long time ago that he also had a penthouse in Manhattan of some description, or some highfalutin apartment there in Manhattan for when,
I'd pay to see that.
He was in the city for business or whatever the case, or maybe it was in Stamford. I don't know if he's near the office. He ought to just buy Connecticut. Just buy Connecticut, run a few people off, and make the rest of them the gardeners and the landscapers and the housemates and things.
He's not even the richest guy in Greenwich. What do you buy Connecticut?
Whoa, he's got a credit card, though. Well, he can make some time payments. He's never going to retire.
But he has a history of reneging on a deal and just saying tough.
Yeah. And then how you going to fucking repossess Connecticut? That would be a trick. Once he gets in there, he'd be like a squatter. And then, would the state government have 90 days to kick him out of Connecticut if he didn't, make all the payments? McDivitt could fucking branch that out into 6-8 months at least. And then, a man's 70-something years old, you're getting close to a ticking clock there. I think if he bought Connecticut on credit, he could live there the rest of his life before they figured out a way to get him out.
He doesn't have enough money or enough credit to buy anything like that. So let's get out of that. But I think maybe he's going to get a room in Stephanie and Paul's house. Like, the grandkids get to grow up with crazy Grandpa Vince in the house, and, they help him brush his teeth and everything else.
I thought you just get a room. I didn't even know you were going at Stephanie and
I didn't mean get a room.
Just get a room. Well, no, here's the thing. When Shane got married, and I don't know what he did for Stephanie, maybe he bought her Rhode Island or New Hampshire or whatever the fucking state is up there, the little postage stamp state they live in. But at Vince's old place in Greenwich, the house I was talking about, there was a building, a structure. If you went out, back past Vince's pool and looked down way in the woods and everything, there was a sizable building that apparently had been like a 3-car garage with maybe even servants' quarters on top, that type of thing. It was the size of a, 2-bedroom house with 2 floors. And, it hadn't been used, I guess, or it was, still its original purpose, a garage or whatever. And when Shane got married, Vince had that re-renovated, that's fucking English, had it renovated and gave it to him and Marissa as a wedding present so he could live down the hill for a while there. I'm obviously...
Yeah, what a gift. I get to supervise you forever.
Yeah. I'm looking down on you, Shane, but that was 25 years ago. The man's made a lot of money since then. He's moved out, but he spent, and this was, again, 25 years ago, and this is not conjecture because on one of my trips into the kitchen to get a goddamn cold drink out of the refrigerator, there was the construction bill laying on the counter, exposed for all the world to see. He spent like 120, 130 grand on just renovating this. It was probably nicer than most places that people live to begin with, but he spent that money to renovate it so it would be suitable for a wedding present. I'm like, Jesus Christ. $125,000 or whatever for a wedding present, maybe he could adopt me. But then I realized I'd have to live there too, and then I'd be working all the time. Go ahead.
Vince and his family have always said that whatever they do, whatever they ask talent to do, it's always what's best for business. It later became an on-air thing, but it was a reality behind the scenes. It's all about what's best for business. And I think that should apply here. And whatever Vince is going to do, wherever he's going to move, There should be a film crew on him 24/7 right now. This is the reality show that America needs. Vince McMahon house hunting. And then living somewhere. And just watch him live. Everyone's fascinated by what a crazy guy this is. What does he do in his spare time? It's what's best for business. It would be the most watched show WWE could produce right now.
I want to see the move. Also, and see exactly how if he would arrange the things himself, or if he'd have it done and then he'd critique it afterwards, or whatever the case may be.
Did he have possessions in his house that were like cherished? Like for me, like my library's a big deal. I love my books. Did he have like actual possessions that he cared about or anything that he exhibited to you?
He cared about, yes.
No, I don't know. To me, he seems like a guy that just wouldn't give a shit about like any actual possessions.
No, I don't know why. He had possessions that he cared about. There was the aforementioned Rhode Island. He used to like that place. He doesn't get up there anymore. No, I mean, it was a typical mansion with mansion-like furniture in it in most places, but he did off of it. You walked in the door, and to the left was the infamous dining room, after this big entry hall and the aforementioned guest bathroom and etc. And then you kind of went into another big sitting room area, and on the left was the dining room that was right off of the kitchen, and on the right he had a private office, den, office, whatever. Every once in a while you would go in there, but not obviously alone, if that's where he had his VCR hooked up, if he had to watch something. And a fax machine back there. And that's where he'd go back and take calls with Brett and Sean whining at each other. But I was back in there, and he had books on the shelves and a nice desk and family pictures. And I didn't ask him, the goddamn backstory behind every furnishing, but it looked like an older, rich white guy's office with statuary and things. Who
has no interest in anything that's happening in the real world.
Well, there wasn't a lot of the real world in there, no, but it was his world, and he was welcome to it. Remember that? William Wyndham, early 1970s, my world and welcome to it.
Like there was no, Jim, I want to show you, this is my baseball card collection. I kept this in a shoebox in a trailer when I was a kid. None of that.
No, that was not anything like that. Well, but that would have required us to go over and just visit. And just be talking about shit that wasn't related to what was going to be on the USA Network that following Monday night. And he never really does that. And I would say maybe in the car, but at the same time in the car, he's always got his fucking notepad open and going over the formats. So there was not a lot of baseball cards showing off there.
All
he
right.
He got upset. Well, Bruce used to tell it, because Bruce didn't like Jerry Jarrett, because when Jerry Jarrett went up there, he treated Vince and Pat with deferential respect and treated Bruce like fucking office boy. But Bruce always liked to tell the story of when Ron Howard brought his kids trick-or-treating one Halloween. They were up there. It had to be 92 or 93 or whatever. But he comes to the door, and Jerry Jarrett's sitting back, and he looked and he saw who it was. He said, well, that's Opie Taylor, like Jerry Jarrett talks, because he's from the South. Well, then, of course, Bruce tries to do impersonations of people. Well, he said, well, there's Opie Taylor. Opie Taylor. Well, Jerry Jarrett didn't run up to the guy screaming, you're Opie Taylor, and ask for his autograph. But in Bruce's fucking rendition of the story, he did. So one time I'm going over there on a Wednesday to write TV, and I have stopped, and I'm second in line at the guard shack. And the first guy gets out of the car because he goes over and he collects a package from the guard shack there and puts it back in his car, and it's Ron Howard. So on the way, then you have to drive another couple miles to get back to Vince's house. So on the way down the road, I said, I got to do this. So when I got there, Vince was in the bathroom or whatever, and real quick, I got my briefcase and I got a piece of paper, and I wrote Ron and then scratched it out and wrote Opie Taylor in kind of goofy handwriting. And when Vince came in, I said, Vince, you're never going to believe who I saw at the guard shack. He's, who's that? He's already trepidatious, right? I said, I saw Ron Howard, the director, Ron Howard. Well, yes, pal. Yeah, he lives down the road. He didn't know that Bruce was telling his Jerry Jarrett story. So He lives down the road. Yeah, I saw him, and I got out and I asked for his autograph, and you should have. Then the mortification starts coming on. Vince is for you, did? And then I said, yeah, look, and I held that piece of paper out. I said he started to write Ron Howard, but then I told him, I said, no, if we would write Opie Taylor. And he was nice enough to do that. He gave me a weird look, and he got back in his car, but I guess he figured, he looked at my car. I didn't belong here, but I told him I was coming to see you because I was working for you, and I'm here every week. His fucking eyes lit. You did? And we had to tell him. Unfortunately, we had to, because I was afraid he was going to fucking call Ron Howard and apologize. You had to be there.
What did he say when you told him?
Well, then he laughed. Then he got the rib, and he thought it was funny.
So you can rib Vince.
Yeah, that does something like that. Yeah, no, he thought it was funny after that, but at first he thought, oh my God, he asked Ron Howard to sign an autograph at the guard shack for Opie Taylor, and then told him he was coming to my house. So I don't know, maybe he would have called and apologized like fucking Stu Hart called and yelled at Bruce when I told Stu that Bruce was the sexual deviant and everything. But that's a different story for another day.